Hello, my name is Justin Childress, and I am a clinical assistant professor in the Master of Arts in Design and Innovation program at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. I teach an introductory graduate course called The Context and Impact of Design, where students are expected to engage with the hyperlocal environment, bringing both the rigor of academic research and their unique perspectives as practicing designers to a specific topic of their choosing. Here, I seek to do the same. This paper proposes that my home city of Dallas, as a representative Sun Belt city, reveals the complex interplay between its physical infrastructure and its evolving collective memory, shaped by both visible and hidden narratives. While it dives into specific aspects of Dallas, it does not encompass the entirety of the city's youthful restlessness. However, it has been said that a city is a story, and I want to examine a young city through that lens in the tradition of writers such as Ian Sinclair, Rebecca Solnit, Robert McFarlane, and other so-called walking writers who explored the collision of past and present through practice. Literature, like a city, is both a communal and individual device, one that once written is immovable in its content but individual to each reader. By delving into the buried history, liminal spaces, and sprawling landscapes of Dallas, I aim to reveal how these elements contribute to the city's evolving identity and collective mythology. Part 1. Buried History. In the buried city, the tunnels change slowly. The light flickers fluorescent, gentle humming like electric cicadas, a soundtrack of unchanging space. The tunnels spread beneath the city streets, spidery and meandering, each curve and corner hiding either another branching corridor in the compulsion to continue, or a dead end. A pedestrian tunnel, especially, is a timeless vault. This particular vault is buried beneath the city of Dallas, the third largest city in the second largest U.S. state. Dallas anchors North Texas with a brash confidence that belies its status as a city on the scorching southern plains that exists serendipitously. It is roughly halfway between the east and west coasts of the United States and was founded at the narrowest and safest north-south crossing of the Trinity River between Austin and Oklahoma. It has no port, an unnavigable river, little enviable topography. Its convenience as a halfway spot for trains or airplanes needing a place to rest and refuel isn't romantic. Unlike most of Texas obsessed with its history, Dallas doesn't even have a clear origin for its name. To some, this unremarkable narrative is a point of pride. To quote Patricia Hill, two basic notions pervade the memoirs of early settlers and commentaries of local journalists that jointly serve as the city's history. The first is that Dallas is too new to display an interest in the past. The other is that historical processes are secondary to the spirit and determination of Dallas's builders, who according to local lore created a modern city where none should be. The pedestrian network that was built under downtown Dallas is an open secret, one that isn't advertised to newcomers, but nonetheless open to all if you can find it. Over 3 miles long, the network was built in the 1970s as the brainchild of Vincent Ponte, deemed multi-level man by Time magazine, who was commissioned to revitalize a tepid downtown by extending the streetscape downwards, which also served the purpose of allowing pedestrians a brief respite from the Texas heat. Once completed, the tunnels had the unforeseen effect of decimating street-level retail and foot traffic. The downtown population did not swell to fill the new space. It simply relocated from the old, a failure of induced demand. Critic David Dillon put it as such. What seemed like progressive planning in the 1960s has become regressive in the 1990s. Instead of the center of civic life, downtown has become a collection of discrete worlds where each project looks out for itself, and nobody looks out for the whole. A visible city killed by a hidden one. As Ponte himself inadvertently prophesied prior to the project, dispersion is decay. As readers of the city, we experience both the streets and our story of the streets. Daniel Dennett refers to the self as the center of narrative gravity, an abstractum, a theorist fiction that nonetheless can anchor our interpretation of the things we experience. These byways of the structural and reflective create a mythology of the city. Quoting N.K. Jemisin, a city is not just a place, it's a collective memory. But what does the mythology of a young city look like? What bedtime stories does it tell itself? In Jemisin's Great Cities duology, each global city is alive, inhabiting a human as a symbiotic avatar, with the city being able to see, feel, laugh, and cry. Sometimes cities even die. Each city has a memory. It can actively remember, and it inhabits those memories. Who would Dallas inhabit? What kind of person? Dubbed the City of Hate after being the site of President John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, Esquire magazine declared that while Dallas shared its urban ignominy with Washington and Buffalo, it was the only city to have emerged with the killing as part of its permanent image. Carissa in Terranova writes that Planner Ponte sought to reconfigure the city's image, moving it away from the violence of assassination to the sleek futurism of modern functionalism. Dallas's image was fundamentally connected with the city as a place of action and event, function and performance, and unfortunately, as such, its role as the mise en scene for the trauma of public murder. Indeed, Dallas still seems to shrink from the fear that its avatar is perhaps not a president, but a killer. Texas theater, built as the crowning jewel of Howard Hughes' cinema empire in 1931, was showing the film War is Hell on November 22, 1963, when Kennedy's assassin Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested in his seat 3 rows from the back, 5 from the aisle. This historic theater is situated on Jefferson Avenue in the Oak Cliff neighborhood of Dallas, a few blocks from where my family and I have lived for the past decade. The Texas Theater has become a part of our personal narrative, a fixture in our lives. My children even celebrated their 6th birthday party there, running rampant in the aisles while animated characters flickered on the screen, a stark contrast to the theater's most notorious moment. One seat in the balcony bears a brass plaque with my name on it, a testament to my financial support during the pandemic. Ironically, despite the plaque, I've never been able to find the seat in the dark. Reflecting on this juxtaposition, I am reminded of Jameson's portrayal of great cities where lives untangle and unbraid, weave and unravel, surge and wane. Apparently the same can be said of this one. The same space that once bore witness to a nation's grief now hosts neighborhood birthday parties, intertwining the city's collective memory with our individual lives. This duality, the collision of historic significance and personal experience, embodies the complex identity of this city and of every city. Every city is a ghost. Part 2. Liminal Personae. The hidden tunnels of Dallas narrate urban planning missteps, while the streets above ground reveal another facet of the city's identity. Emerging from the tunnels, the intricate interior transitions to a structured downtown grid, which again transforms into a complex network of over 460 miles of urban highways. Downtown Dallas's street level is a liminal space, a transition zone between the subterranean catacombs and the towering glass buildings. According to Victor Turner, individuals in liminal spaces are outside their usual social roles, existing between their previous status and a new one. He described them as liminal personae, or threshold people, who are between positions defined by law, custom, and convention. Turner's work focused on traditional rites of passage, not the modern urban experience. However, architect Sushi Reddy's concept of the democratic space of the body and Ian Maxwell's idea of liminality in theater suggests our experience of the city is a performance and a negotiation with our environment. In this performative mode, we engage with the city in a communal, intimate liminality, experiencing the city's inherent nature and our own perceptions simultaneously. To quote China Mieville, where the two cities are close up, they make for interference patterns harder to read or predict. They are more than a city and a city. That is elementary urban arithmetic. Mieville's novel, The City and the City, a book betwixt and between the genres of detective fiction, science fiction, and fantasy, explores this dichotomy of communal versus individual urban interpretations. The two cities in question are Basel and Oklahoma, two localities which are not adjacent, but enmeshed into what Mieville calls doppelgangers, two cities, quote, gross topically sharing the same physical space. Layered cities. The citizens of the cities are not allowed to interact across the border, and in fact are required to unsee the other city altogether. To breach is a crime enforced by breach, a shadowy authority that exists between the cities in a place also called breach. An act, a person, and a place. Shannon Q. Michael writes about this place that belongs nowhere as a gap, a third place, a threshold with inhabitable form. Quote, it follows Then that when citizens of Basel or Uquomo use sight or language in a way that breaches, they can move into the interstice and take uncreation, recreation, and control for themselves as sub-creators in this gap. Mieville notably refers to the border between the two cities as a membrane or a skin, not a fence or a wall. Simone Wilcock, following up on a statement by Sandor Klapsik, observes that Mieville's Toppelganger cities echo Klapsik's description of liminality as the space of continuous transference, an infinite process formed by transgressions across evanescent, porous, evasive borderlines. Klapsik himself considers liminality a question of perspective, not necessarily object or time. In Dallas, or in any city, a downtown street is also a Toppelganger of sorts, shifting layers of interaction as our own experience overlaps with the experience of those we come into proximity with, allowing each of our individual cities to collide. Hume argued that we never see things as they are, only our perceptions of them, while Husserl contended we experience things in themselves, not just sensations. Mark P. Drost expanded on Husserl's idea, distinguishing between perception and imagination as different types of consciousness with distinct intentional structures. However, as we surface into the sunlight and our nerves perceive the transition from the muggy coolness underground to the scalding Texas sun in a cloudless sky, I'm not sure if it matters whether we perceive the city as a thing in itself or merely as an interpretation of the image. Perhaps we can, as Mieville's narrator claims, live in both the city and the city. Or perhaps, as Italo Calvino's narrator in his novel Invisible Cities describes the semiotic city, quote, the eye does not see things, but images of things that mean other things. The downtown street is also in tension with its own ghosts. Per Calvino, the city does not tell its past, but contains it like the lines of a hand. As we exit the tunnels, we immediately encounter the Wilson Building, finished in 1904 and still a vibrant commercial and residential space. In 1909, the Praetorian Building opened a block down Main Street from the Wilson Building. When it opened, it was the first skyscraper not only in Texas, but in the entire Southwest. It was demolished unexpectedly on a Sunday in 2013 while the Dallas Cowboys were playing, and the streets were empty. The lot where it once stood is now inhabited by a giant 30-foot eyeball, which the artist himself says has no meaning. V. Rao writes, as an evident material archive, the built environment of the city reveals as much as it conceals about the political and historical processes to which cities are subjected through time. For cities are places of continual accumulation as well as destruction and subtraction, and even forms of historic preservation serve destructive ends through acts of architectural eugenics. Perhaps it's ironic that even an eyeball that big can't perceive the specter of the Praetorian. The border of memory is not a wall, it is a membrane, and it's easy to tear. Part 3, Entanglement. As we drift out of downtown and into the entangling threads of the highways that surround the city, we start to witness the archetypal Sunbelt landscape, repeating patterns of off-ramps and commercial shopping strips containing the same limited collection of offerings. Another place of communitas and moments out of time, though in this case the participants are barred from each other by internal combustion engines and continual velocity. Moving north out of the city, you could be anywhere: Atlanta, Houston, Phoenix, or Las Vegas. Sprawl is both a corporeal reality and an experience in that both our mind and our environment can be stretched thin, drawn in too many directions without enough concentrated attention. The city of Dallas is 385.9 square miles, containing approximately 3,500 people per square mile. However, when the surrounding region is included and stretched to its full breadth of 9,286 square miles, it contains only 800 people per square mile. In contrast, central London contains over 14,000 people per square mile. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, between July 1st, 2022 and July 1st, 2023, the Dallas-Fort Worth or DFW region experienced the fastest population growth in the country. It added 152,598 people during those 365 days. However, between 2020 and 2023, the city of Dallas proper lost a net 5,000 residents. New residents are spreading to fill the upper sections of the region, while old residents flee the city center at the rate of 34,000 people a year. However, in this region, the population is a gas, not a liquid. It expands to fill the space it is given without increasing in volume. Too little butter scraped over too much bread, as Tolkien put it, and the bread is being built at a rate of millions of square feet per year. New structures swarm northwards towards Oklahoma as corporate headquarters relocate to Texas. In 2023 alone, 19 notable companies moved their headquarters to North Texas, including 11 from California. In this case, sprawl is both a noun and a verb. We consider both sprawl as the environmental homogeny of chain restaurants and housing built quickly and cheaply, as well as the mode of urban expansion itself as a deliberate act for those seeking places to sprawl, craving distant neighbors and familiar routines. Over a century ago, George Simmel noted that, quote, "There is perhaps no psychic phenomenon which is so unconditionally reserved to the city as the blasé outlook. In the Dallas region, this indifference has extended to the creeping exurbs, or the suburbs beyond the suburbs." Simmel described the blasé attitude as an indifference toward distinctions where the meaning and value of differences between things are experienced as meaningless. Robert Putnam highlights the risk of living in such homogeneous areas. Quote, "In small groups of people, narrowly focused participants risk losing touch with the broader sweep of humanity in views that might challenge, enlarge, and enrich their own. They forget how to hear, evaluate, and sometimes incorporate novel ideas. They become smaller selves." This tendency to sprawl is in some ways its own form of deliberate unseeing. The more uniform our surroundings, the less challenging they become. It is easy to fear the things that seem strange. In contrast, the minor, spontaneous interactions in a compact city challenge homogeneous thinking and remind us that our interpretation of the world is just one among many. As Gillian Sandstrom summarized, I think that relief might just be the feeling that we're sold this message, that the world is a scary place, and then you have a chat with someone, some random person, and it goes well, and it's sort of like, maybe the world isn't so bad after all. In his imagined cartography of invisible cities, Calvino suggests that cities are not just physical spaces, but constructs of our imagination and memory. In that spirit, this essay has explored Dallas through its buried history, liminal spaces, and sprawling landscapes, revealing how the city functions as both tangible environment and a repository of collective memory. Dallas, like any city, is shaped by both its hidden and visible narratives, functioning as a living story constantly rewritten by its inhabitants. As Marco Polo observed in Invisible Cities, every time I describe a city, I am saying something about Venice. Similarly, exploring Dallas reveals not just the city's essence, but also our own perception of urban life in an archetypal Sunbelt city. Understanding these narratives allows us to appreciate cities as dynamic entities shaped by those who inhabit and imagine them. As Marco Polo mused about Venice, so too does our reflection on Dallas illuminate the intertwined nature of our own urban experiences, urging us to continually reimagine and reinterpret the cities we call home. Thank you.